Hello, everyone. My name is Margriet Mouton, and with me on the line, I've got Yendor Felgate, co-founder of the Being Human Group and my business partner. And today, we want to demonstrate to you how a team grit works and how we've used it in the past with the teams that we've spent time with. Yendor, thank you for being on the line with me today.
Fantastic, Margriet. I'm really looking forward to it. Team grids is something that we use often. Our clients often look at the power and edge of it and are amazed by the insight and what comes out of a team grid discussion and feedback. So I'm very pleased that we have a real nice live case study that we can share with our viewers, and we'll take them through about why we get so excited about the power and edge of team grids.
Excellent. Now, Yendor, for the people watching this, I just want to set some context. So we're currently in the midst of the pandemic, the coronavirus lockdown, and we've been talking to many managers and teams as well who mentioned to us that they're really, really struggling to work together as a virtual team. They are experiencing emotions that they haven't experienced before. They are at home with the kids they have to deliver, and then they have to start guessing how their fellow colleagues work at home and how they will respond to different requests and so on. And so we thought it would be a good idea to share a case study with you about a team that I spent some time with not so long ago.
Yeah, Margriet, I think that's spot on. The whole idea of virtual teamwork has hit us at like a runaway train. And I think the first 30 to 60 days was relatively easy. We were still in the honeymoon phase, but I think the rubber's now hitting the road. And some of the issues I think you put your finger on. We love the team grid because it gives tools to managers and teams and clues in terms of how to work together when everything else around them is changing. They're not changing as human beings, but their responses and their reactions and their behaviors need to change. And this all gives teams great clues on how to do that.
Let me share with you a little bit about the team that I spent some time with. So the manager came to me and said to me that they are working incredibly hard. It's a hard-working team. And they're all about relationships, but suddenly, because they're working from home, they're really struggling with their relationships, and people are becoming irritated, and they are not as close as a team as they were previously. I invited the manager to have her team do the Clifton Strengths Assessment. For those who don't know, the Clifton Strengths Assessment shows you where your areas of biggest potential lies, and when they do the assessment, you get your top 5 strengths. I invited the manager to have her team do the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and she sent all the results through to me. Then what we did is we plotted those results onto a strengths team grid. And I shared this team grid with the manager as well as with the team during a team session. I'd like to share this with you. And then, Yendor, I want to ask you to provide some insights for us on this team grid.
Happy to do that, Margriet. I'm very pleased that you've selected this one as an example. And even during these times of the pandemic, even good teams actually do need help. And what we're trying to say to teams is that working hard is great. Working smarter is a little bit better, and the Strengths Insights will certainly help with that. But it is no admission of failure if you need some help.
So, Yendor, on your screen, you should be able to see this team strengths grid that I did for this team.
I think it's just useful just to help folk understand how to navigate and actually read a team grid. So the way to think about it is on the left-hand side, you'll see this team is made up of 9 people. Their names are there from Cherise, Cindy, Christelle down to Zoe. Just to let you know, we do have permission for this team to share this as a case study. On the top of the team strength grid, you'll see categories, and they're color coordinated or coded, starting with strategic thinking in the red, influencing in the yellow, blue is relationship building, and purple is execution. Our view around teams is that a team has to be able to do all 4 of these to be successful. So we're not looking at a well-rounded, evenly distributed strengths pattern, but we need strengths to operate in all four areas to be successful. And you could understand this. Imagine your team, for example. You want them to be able to think strategically and add value and think smart. You obviously want a team to execute because that's the reason why they're there, but you want to do it in such a way that they can build great relationships within the team and between teams, plus also influence where they need to in terms of their delivery, perhaps the market, perhaps customers, perhaps they're a support team to a sales department, and so forth. So elements of all four of these are really quite important. And a team really needs to understand which mixture of these four really is important for them to be successful in their context. So that's sort of what we would call a strategic level. The second way of thinking about this is obviously to look at the patterns. And I think, Machrit, you jump straight into that because that is the fascinating bit about team grids, is where do the strengths dominance lies? And you can see if you look at the percentages, this team is 40% executing, 36% relationship building, and then 11 and 13% influencing and strategic thinking, respectively. So we can start to think a little bit about, right, so what does that mean? And then the final level is that we can start to look at individuals, the individual layers. And so we can pick somebody like Katinas, for example, who is highly execution dominant, some relationship, but nothing in the influencing the strategic thinking space. So if we need a tennis to operate in terms of strategic thinking dominance, in terms of his top five, he's not going to be a natural at that. So is there some way of partnering him, say, with somebody like a Christelle, who's strong at strategic thinking, but may not be as strong in execution? So you can start to see the team in three levels: strategic, in terms of the domains or categories, the patterns of where this thing lies, and then finally individuals and where we can partner them from a complementary point of view. I think it's just useful to know that there are two really key things to keep in mind here. One is, and I reiterate this again, we are not looking for a well-rounded or evenly distributed pattern. We're all unique individuals, and so that would be an unrealistic expectation. And the second rule of thumb, if we look at this team, they seem to be low on influencing. Does that mean they can't influence? No, it doesn't. It means that they just need to look at where they are strong and aim or intentionally use their strengths to achieve that as an outcome. So what we don't do is we don't dive straight into the team grid and go, oh, we don't have enough yellow, therefore we must fire everybody and go and hire more people with yellow strengths. That's not the message at all. The message is, how can we coordinate, manage, connect these people in such a way that they can play to their strengths and achieve great outcomes in terms of strategic thinking, influencing, relationship building, and execution.
So, Yendor, if I think about this team, I know that they are customer service orientated. So their job is to make sure that the customers are comfortable, that the customers know what is expected of, what's expected of them, and what the customers need to do on a week-to-week basis to increase engagement with this specific company. And if I look at the relationship building domain, I can see that they absolutely are so positioned to give great customer service. So not only do they build great relationships, but they're also able to execute on the promises that they make, which I found fascinating.
So, Machrit, just to sum up then, in terms of strength language, this team, which is highly customer focused, needs to build relationships and execute well, and they have a dominance of their strengths lying in those two areas. So on the face of it, it seems like they're well positioned from a strength point of view.
The problem that this team faced is that with the pandemic, and the team needed to go virtual in a very short space of time, even though they have relationship building themes, they started to scratch one another. And when I showed this team grid to the manager got insight not only in the power of her team, but also in some gaps where they can focus people with strategic thinking more in order to support those with relationship building and executing themes.
Well, Mahrid, you've said a lot there. I think you just let's unpack some of that for the people that are watching. So what you're saying to me is interesting, is that by going virtual, some of the relationship strengths started to create a bit of frustration because they had no longer had that intimacy with each other and with the clients. So the way to think about strengths is not only that it can help you to do things, but it also has needs. And so in terms of relationships, their strength needs weren't being met, and this was creating a bit of stress and frustration.
The guys with the strengths of developer needed to grow people. Now suddenly there's no colleagues that they can engage with around their growth. You know, it's just focusing on execution, and it's almost as if the need to execute was amplified.
In the absence of having their relationship needs being met, they just worked harder. Is that what you're saying?
That is exactly what I'm saying, Yendor.
And no surprise, you know, good people, when the rubber hits the road and there's a challenge, because they're committed and good people, they will try harder. And that I can so see that the volume of execution went totally haywire. Was that your experience with working with this team?
Yes, it was, you know, specifically because they've got 6 people that has the strength of responsibility, which means that they keep commitments. Yeah. And they've got 5 people in the team that has got the strength of achiever. People with achiever make lists every day and they want to tick off the lists. So not only did they have, you know, a lot of things on their list, but they almost felt guilty if they did not keep their commitments.
Well, I think, Mahrid, that's great insight. So what you're saying in the execution thing, what made this amplification even greater is the responsibility. I will do it regardless of whether the world has changed. Plus the achiever, that double amplification of taking responsibility to get things done and ticking those things off. I can understand why you were starting to see frustration and people starting to get a bit really itchy with each other, as you would say. So yeah, I can see. So we have the strength need not be met, and then we have an amplification of execution. I so see that. But you also raised an interesting point about strategic thinking and influencing. Just talk to me a little bit about how the team saw the relative lack of dominance in the thinking space and the influencing space.
You know, when I spent time with the team and I saw this team grid, it was sort of glaring at them that they are so low and strategic. On the other hand, it made so much sense to them that strategic thinking was so low, because they were saying, you know, when the company gives us a challenge, then we just jump in and start doing things. We don't coordinate, and there's no planning. And for that reason, people started overcommitting and experiencing burnout, and people started to feel that they're doing too much. And it's because there was that lack of planning. So what that alerted the manager to was to not only check in on a daily basis with her team members that's high on execution, but to bring the team together at the beginning of a project and just focus on thinking through it strategically and do more planning.
So, Mahrid, I think you put your finger on a great point for a lot of teams, specifically in South Africa, where we do most of our work. I mean, I noticed there, for example, Christelle has a number of strategic thinking strengths. So in your work with the team, what you're saying is Christelle could really add a lot of value around first helping to think through before executing, because we know this team can execute, but executing in the right way may be a critical question for them. Am I hearing that correctly?
Absolutely, Yendor, and Christelle is also the manager, so she is in the position to drive that strategic thinking and planning prior to engaging into a project.
So, Mahrid, I think coming out of the team grid then, the manager is starting to get a bit of a game plan. In other words, she's starting to understand that she needs to intervene and help prioritize what her team is doing. So turn down the volume of the execution or make it more relevant. The other thing that I'm getting is that there's the sense that the team manager has to help people connect and feed that relationship dominance to remove the frustration of the virtual a little bit, and then the repositioning of and the importance of thinking things through, given the new context and what they're doing. But talk to us a little bit about how they felt around influencing, which is relatively low in terms of their strengths representation. Was there a view around that? Did they feel uncomfortable? How did they respond to it?
They responded with shock because their influencing themes are so low. But I calmed them down by saying, you know what, this is the team grid that most of the teams in South Africa has. So influencing is usually comes in low. The key to this is to see how you can use your relationship building, executing, and strategic thinking theme to influence. The question, of course, is who do we need to influence? And it was interesting that for this team, they are used to telling stories of what they are doing through social media. So we could immediately identify that the two members with communication, which is Cherise and Cindy, has brought a lot to the team in terms of influencing their customers through the stories that they tell, on Instagram and Facebook and so on. What they did mention is that the CEO of the company has got Maximizer in his top 5, and that they will ask Sheldon, who's got Maximizer, to help them to interpret what excellence will look like for their team. And I thought that was great insight.
Love to hear that. So what we're saying is that in teams as small as 9 people, 1 or 2 people can really make a difference if they use their strengths intentionally. So love the story around communication and the interpretation of Maximizer. I think if I was working with this team with you, I would say that I could give them a lot of reassurance. If they are customer focused and they are credible because they can deliver and they can tell and build great relationships, if the communication people can get that story out, they are going to be a highly influential customer service team.
The other thing that came out was people started to realize that they can become more powerful if they partner with someone who has strengths in areas that they don't have.
Now, I was wondering about that because I think there could be some great complementary partnerships. Can you give an example of one that happened?
Yeah, absolutely. So Cindy, who's got no relationship building themes in her top 5, had a great discussion with Tianis, who's got 3 relationship building themes, and both of them understood what the other actually cared about, and they came to a conclusion that they will assist one another and check in frequently with one another if they feel uncomfortable or if they're uncertain, if they handle the situation correctly. And in that way, that they decided to partner with one another. I thought that was great.
So, yeah, I noticed that Tianis not only has relationship building, but he also has woo, winning others over. So that could be quite a powerful combination with positivity and working with somebody that values hard work and execution. Excellent. Margriet, well, that gives us a bit of a sense of, how to think about a team grid strategically, how to think about tactics around using strategic thinking or influencing, relationship building, or executing the different, and then working down to the individual impact, the game plan for the manager, and perhaps an opportunity for people to understand how they can contribute valuably, like the people in the communication, like the example of Tianis, and so how we can also complement each other. But coming out of this, how did the team feel, and what do you think the impact of having a team grid discussion with the team is?
They thought that it was very valuable, not only to see where they are strong, where they are a little bit less strong in influencing, but it also made them feel that they can work together as a team by focusing on strengths. They understood why some people in the team are getting annoyed by others. There was a self-awareness that came out. They also formed new partnerships. They thought that was really valuable because we don't wear our strengths on our foreheads, of course.
Yeah. Yes. But what I'm hearing is in terms of this team is they were able to understand what frustrated them, so they could take the frustration and stress down a notch. So it helped them manage their stress. I think what I'm also hearing is the fact the team now feels it can move forward. It's not stuck anymore, and it's not stuck in a cycle of stress and frustration. I also get the sense that they understand how they can create value and ongoing value for their customers. And I also get the sense from a Christelle team manager point of view, she now has a valuable game plan on how to sustain this going forward.
All right, I think great conversation. Thank you for your insights. Really appreciate it. If you had one or two tips to give to managers who have not yet done the team grid, what would that be?
Yeah, so I think managers need to understand that they are in an incredibly important role now with virtual team management. Their role has never been more important in terms of reaching out and connecting, understanding their needs of each of the individuals in their teams, and being able to rearrange and use strengths in a way that makes sense. So if managers haven't or don't have a strength insight to their teams, I think they're in a very difficult situation. So they're important. They need greater insight, and it can't be business as usual. So what worked in the past is not going to work now. So we think the Clifton Strength Finder and the Team Grid is really a great call to action for managers, because it really gives them an insight on how to use the power and edge of their teams.